Hello, it's Joy Taylor with the Soul Inspired Life, and I'm thrilled. I'm always loving these interviews and these inspired conversations. Today, I'm with David Hazard, who, first and foremost, is my writing coach. David, I'm so happy you're here.
You know what, Joy? Thanks for having me on. It's great to connect with you, and great to be able to address your audience of
Yeah.
really interesting sounding people, my people.
Yes, yes, we both love consciousness, which is really how we met. I was introduced to you. I was at a healing retreat, and one of your clients that you mentored in writing, I think, 3 books, told me how you really made the difference in her having a framework and going for it. And that was in my early stages. Gosh, it was about 4 years ago. I think I just had the idea. I held on to your number and eventually called you. We had a wonderful conversation, and you really supported me immensely in understanding the power of even having a book and what to do with all the thoughts I had about what later became inspired. And that's what you do. You're a mentor, you're a coach, you help people with book covers and design and marketing. And yeah, a lot of the people I work with, I help them build their online courses and their online presence. But I know there's a book inside of a lot of my clients. And so I want to start there about really asking you, I know you've worked with over 400 people, what makes a powerful book? What makes a powerful book? And when does someone know it's time to write a book?
Well, wow, 2 big questions. So, what do I think is the secret of a powerful book? Well, let me start with a vision that I had quite a number of years ago. And I was in a deep meditative state and not really thinking about writing at all. I was in just sort of a very clear, open awareness. And suddenly, spontaneously, I saw this incredible river of light just flowing all over the planet, just around and around and over and around. And it was just beautiful, and it took my breath away. And I realized that it is the river of consciousness flowing over this planet. And it's the kind of consciousness that raises the light, raises our awareness, and moves us on in a spiritual evolution of humanity. And while I was in this awareness and marveling at this incredible river, I suddenly realized that there were, thousands and thousands and thousands of people walking toward this river, each one of them carrying a little bucket of light. And suddenly I became aware, it was just this knowing that, every one of us has a bucket of light to pour into this river to raise the level of the light. And that light that we have comes from our lived experience. Some from what we've been taught, some from what we've read or what we've heard, but the power of it, the power of what we carry in us and what makes a good book is really our lived experience. What we can truthfully say that we know because somehow we were brought toe to toe with the front edge of what no longer worked, and had to reach out beyond our ego to have it replaced by something we didn't know yet and take that risk. And it's those authors that I love working with because they've gone through a sort of, if you will, a spiritual death and resurrection, or an awakening to something new. And it's like watching someone stand on an opposite shore of an ocean and say, how did I not know this other continent was here all my life?
Right.
And that's just such an exciting journey to go on with an author.
I love that lived experience. So a good book is a book that has some lessons learned from the actual direct experience of often a challenge. What I'm hearing you also say is it's the hero's journey, right? Every one of us who are transformational leaders or healers, we've gone through some things to bring us to where we are. So how does someone know it's time to write that book? Like they've been on the edge, they've got their bucket. When is it really time?
Uh, well, let me take this on a little side journey before I come back around to answering that question.
Okay.
Because I find that for every one of us, especially in this media potent, media saturated world, in this marketing saturated world, there's also a danger for the writer, even maybe especially the conscious writer. And that is that there's always this shadow of our own ego,
Mm.
that if we're not careful, what we give into is the idea of trying to be important. You know, how will I be noticed among the crowd? You know, there's a million other healers, there's energy healers, there's et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if we're not careful, you know, we start giving into the sort of the voices of American marketing that say, what makes you think you're going to be important? How will you be important? And
Mm.
what I want to say to that is that to enter into the process of writing your book, you have to do the counterintuitive act. It's a counterintuitive act of not trying to be important, but learning the art of being authentic. And, you know, yes, we can learn to meditate and become mindful, but the act of stripping away everything that we think makes us important, that's what takes us to the place of emptying ourselves. And as mystics for ages have known, the well of the spirit fills from within. The well of the spirit fills from within. So we visit emptiness, stripped of self-importance. And then we let that new light rise and show us what's valuable to someone else in our lived experience. And this requires a lot of vulnerability, you know, revealing who we are without our social front, revealing what we needed to learn at our weakest points. And one last little thing about that, you know, someone very wonderful, you know, has written a wonderful book about vulnerability. And don't you know, the ego can reach out and grab that, and you know, now I can be more vulnerable than you. Let me show you how vulnerable it's very tricky. So without going any deeper or further with that, it's that moment of simple honesty that's not trying to really affect anyone. And that's where the most incredible power comes from, because you are open, you are available, and you write something and you think yourself, dear God, where did that come from? See, that's the light filling from within, filling the well from within.
Well, David, I just have to pause because this was my experience in writing the book, is that in the process of writing Inspired, I was confronted with the part of me that wanted to prove she could do it, that wanted to please her dad, that
Mm-hmm.
wanted recognition. And and I would say that actually in the writing, I became more honest. So for me, you know, there is no premature, right? For me, it was actually in the writing, in the publishing, in the coming out,
Mm-hmm.
that I continue to face all of the parts of me that wanted the recognition, that wanted to please or prove. And I love what you're saying too, because we hear the word vulnerable and authentic a lot. So we start having concepts of what it looks like, and then we
Yeah,
just act out and we become what it looks like so we can be more that.
yeah.
And so what I like about what you said was simple honesty. And it's just being honest with self, being honest with paper, being honest with computer, and being honest in the writing. So I feel like you answered the question. The time to write is when you know that you've stripped enough that you can bring forth some simple, true, profound
Yeah. And,
messages.
and I would add one more thing to that,
Yeah.
because that somebody might be listening to this going, well, how the heck do I know if I'm empty enough? How do I know if I'm profound enough? And so the other piece of it is, you know, keep in mind that every communication, every act of communication, if it's a conscious communication, it's a loop. it's saying a truth to a person who needs to and who is awakened and hungry for that truth. If I'm just jabber jawing at somebody and telling them what I think they need to hear, or just telling them what's important to me, and they're not interested in all, well, what happens, we've all had that happen. We have it happen at cocktail parties and workshops. Someone just talks at us, and this little door opens in the back of our head, and we stand there smiling and bobbleheading, and we walk out and we write our grocery list, or we think about the yard work we have to do, or we're really not present because what's being pushed at us is not important to us. So this is the other piece of my answer after that pre-ramble. It's in becoming aware of what it's the exactly sort of the opposite of trying to find the high and noble and newest truth. It's actually going low. It always gets to me. It's finding the common human denominator. What is that between us, that invisible place where sort of all the Venn diagrams overlap? You're a woman, I'm a man, you have, certain external characteristics, I do as well. But that doesn't matter. If we're, for instance, if we're both parents, see, we share in a whole world of awareness and concern and desire and wish. If we're anybody who has suffered, say a loss, then there's our common human denominator. It really, once we meet somebody at that place of commonality, common humanity, we can go from there because they know that we have something to say. And then we can become, I know I used this term with you, we talked about this term as you were working on your book. You became what's called a way shower, somebody who has walked a path but doesn't stand on the side of a mountain like a guru or a prophet shouting down. You go back down to the head of the trail and you start there. And you say, let me at least take you a little further up, just a little further up. If that's all we accomplish for you, that might be enough for this month, for this year, for this lifetime, for this incarnation.
David, this way shower conversation that we had many times, as well as the companion guide, is something that I refer to often. And I want to, we both kind of, I've been thinking about our work in the world and how we really support a lot of people who are conscious, who are bringing more consciousness. You help people write books. I help people create programs and courses online. And they actually go really beautifully hand in hand. And it's a similar energetic. It's like in that online environment, or as the author, the companion guide. I loved how often you said that to me. Joy, you're a companion guide. I'm getting chills. It was important for me because I had a default of being a teacher, because I was, I taught at colleges, and I too often got into the teacher behind a pedestal, and then I lost my low point. I lost my humanity. And so going back down and walking the trail together. And yeah, I've been to the top of this particular trail.
This one.
Right. But there's lots of trails, and there's lots of people, and probably a lot of people who are listening to this interview right now, who have traversed something difficult, and there are other people who need that message. So I want to say a couple more things about, not say, but explore with you the when to write and why to write.
Yeah.
I know for myself that one of the biggest benefits about writing Inspired was my personal growth and my accountability to embody the 7 wisdoms. It was a difficult journey at times, all the way through. I learned a lot. I would totally do it differently. Now, almost a year later, I recognize that I have a framework, and you talked about this a lot in the early stages of the outline. I have a framework. So when I'm asked to speak in public, on summits, in podcasts, there's such a reference point. Having gone through the manuscript and the book so many times, I have stories to tell. So I just wanted to put out there for people who are, should I write a book? Yeah, and while you're writing the book, you are developing a framework that can and ought to, I recommend, become an online class. But do you have other pieces? We talked about being empty. We talked about the state of mind to be in. When else would someone know that it's their time to write a book?
Well, for some people, it really is just intuitive. It's this sense of, oh my gosh, give me a pen or pencil, get me my laptop and get out of my way, let me write. For more people, it's a little more tentative than that. And the logical mind gets in the way and thinks that, well, I'm really busy right now. And so I probably should put this off until I can rent a cabin up in the mountain, or, go to a beach retreat, or, someplace. And,
Yeah,
when I
I
clear the,
love it. That's so
yeah,
true.
yeah. And let me tell you, for most adults that I know, almost every adult that I know, the decks ain't never going to be cleared. You have to clear them. You have to clear them. And that means, I call it, grabbing hold of the space-time continuum and pulling it open. And if you have a yes to a book, you have a no to a bunch of other things. Or you have a not now to a bunch of other things. Hitting the pause button. So there's that technical part, if you will, of opening up space and time. But also, you will find yourself thinking about your subject all the time. It doesn't matter if you're in a grocery store, driving down a road. Oftentimes, it's when your awareness of your subject, awareness of what you want to say, is crowding in. Even in the middle of a conversation with somebody else. They're talking about something that you're moderately interested in or not much interested in, and suddenly you realize that to me, that is a signal that that bucket of light, it's filling up, it's spilling over into all of your other life, and you're thinking about what you have to say, and it's alive, it's energized for you. So it can come when you're not trying to think about it. Or you can find that, somebody asks you a question, and, what spills out is a 20-minute or 30-minute presentation. It's sort of like, it just comes out. Years ago, 1,000 years ago, when I was young, there used to be this print ad for Bose speakers. And it was the picture was of a guy laying back in an overstuffed chair with his hair flying out behind him and a scarf flying out behind him, because the speakers were just blasting him. And it's sort of like, when it's ready to come out, it comes out. I mean, it's conscious volcanism. It's just there all the time. Now, you also don't need to have this is where getting a hold of a good editor or a coach can help you, but you don't need to have it all laid out in order to get started.
I'm really glad you said that, because that was going to be my next question. Because there was, I know for myself, and you helped me tremendously, there was kind of that initial dump.
Mm-hmm.
I think my first manuscript was like 350 pages, and I ended up working on part 2 to be this book. I'm pulling some of the best pieces. So yeah, talk a little bit about that process of, like, the process of writing and letting it out. And you talked a lot about thought baskets. I remember
Yeah.
thought baskets.
Yeah. So, and I'll put this in the context of the fact that for most intuitives, most people who are involved in this kind of work, our greatest difficulty is becoming linear. I had one client said to me, I'm so glad I'm working with somebody who can help me, because I sit down to write and all sectors of the brain open up at once. She was she was a client from,
I love this. This is so true. I love it.
she's a, you know, a client from California, and she said, I sit down and it's like an earthquake went off in my mind, and all the drawers are rattling open, everything's coming out. So yeah, you can do that first grab of just getting down your thoughts. And then you do have to face the issue of linearity. How do you begin? This is going back to that communication loop. How do I first raise in the mind of my potential audience the questions they want to have answered? That's where a book begins. That's going back to the head of the path and remembering what it was like when you didn't know what you know now. And then beyond that, yeah, you know, it's that concept of thought baskets. Most, I don't know if I should say this, but I'm saying it. Most books that come out of the intuitive, you know, they don't have to be linear in the sense of, you know, screw in this screw for, this is not, we're not putting together a table from IKEA. You know, it's like, this must happen first, or number 2 and 3 will never happen. So we have, you know, what we call, you know, the focus wheel. You might remember that, which is, you know, there's a solid central core, but around it there are like these petals, and each petal adds to the center. And it doesn't, again, it doesn't have to be step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And each of those places on the focus wheel is what I call a thought basket. So into that basket, you might begin to pose, you know, what are the problems that the people that you are working with face. The next basket you might put, this is a big one. Most healers will recognize that. Most humans will recognize that. What's our resistance to healing? What's our resistance to change? As desperate as you might be to want to change, you know, we all still have this resistance. So you begin to think through what are the different energies, let's put it that way, the different energies that I'm going to encounter along the way of this journey. And again, they don't have to be in order. They just have to represent reality. And so you can begin to organize your thoughts that way long before you, in fact, I highly recommend that, because then you can begin to see your book start to emerge out of your own psyche, out of your own soul and mind, and begin to realize, I can write this. There's a pattern here, and I can follow it.
You know, this is the freedom, in my experience, actually, both with writing inspired and in developing. I've got 3 signature courses now. And in each one of them, it's really similar. And it is what you're saying, is that there is an explosion, but there's always the reader, the audience, the participant in mind, backing up. But as soon as the outline kind of lands, I felt so much freedom. Once the outline landed, then I was free to have ideas and stories, and I knew where to place them. I'm just thinking about the book. Yeah, really powerful process.
Yeah, see, unless you begin to develop that framework that you're talking about, you know, see, the creative mind and the nonlinear mind, what it does is it popcorns out ideas. They're just all over the lot. It's wonderful, and it's unfortunate job. And then the other aspect of our thinking, the part that needs to organize it, that's where we begin to gently corral those ideas into these you know, thought baskets or thought corrals. And in each one of those, if we begin to do that process, then we can take each one of those baskets and step back and think, well, what is it that I want to say about, for instance, resistance to healing? What examples are there in my own life or in the lives of people I've worked with? So you begin to develop your anecdotes and your examples and your talking points, which comes back around to what you said several times, that a huge benefit of working on a book is that you really create other material. You create the basis for online courses. You create the basis for workshops and talks. You find that, you know, you can take a thought basket and you can expand on it, and one subject can be a whole weekend workshop. Or you can compress it and it can be a 30, 45, 60-minute talk.
Right. And the businesswoman in me, because that's what I love supporting transformational leaders in business. I want to just say it can go both ways. You can have a course and you've done these workshops, you've got all these stories, you've got clients, your workshop becomes your book, right? So it can go both ways. And I really do recommend that, when thinking about writing a book and deciding what to write about, like you said, pull from your experience, pull from your courses, because a book can be such a wonderful introduction to you and your work for your people. And when I say your people, I just mean the people who want to learn from your direct experience, that want your life lived, your way shower path. And so having a book, man, so many benefits too, David. We've talked a lot about the personal benefit, but I also just really, just from a credential, from a confidence, from a following the intuitive guidance of getting it out there, books are still read. People like books. They're always going to like books. And maybe we can kind of close out. I really would love your feedback on the industry, and also specifically for transformational healers, leaders, coaches, consultants. There's a lot of books out there. What's the context of writing a book today?
Yeah, well, in the broadest sense, let me say this. A book is also, we think in terms of our current audience, or who right now might buy it from us, or how could we, reach a particular audience. And we've got all these tricks with Facebook author pages and Twitter and Instagram. But also, a book will go on and spread and spread and spread. In 1983, I went and lived in a Palestinian Christian village in northern Israel, and wrote a book. It was the true life story of a Palestinian Christian peacemaker. At the time that it came out in 1984, it was ahead of its wave. The bookstores didn't want it. Nobody wanted to read about Palestinians. So therefore, the distributors didn't want it, and the marketing and salespeople of the company didn't want it, and they fought with the publisher to put it out of print. And the publisher fought to keep it in print, and did, since he had the final say-so. And now so for me standing there thinking, well, this book is going to sell, a few hundred or a couple thousand copies and it's going to die, that's not the truth. What's happened, here we are all these years later, from 1984 to 2020. And this book, it's called Blood Brothers.
And it's so good, by the way. I have recommended it. I have read it. That book is such a powerful story of spirituality and history. Anyway, keep telling it, but I do recommend Blood Brothers. I love that book. I read it, like I was on a trip and I read it on the plane and I came back and I was crying. I love that story. Anyway,
well,
so where is it today in 2020?
Yeah, so today in 2020, I mean, this book is, it's like it was about to die. It was like a dandelion dying, and then, the seeds that were left got blown around the world. The book is now in 29 languages. And all these years later, it helped to start a movement in Israel, called Christ at the Checkpoints.
Wow.
Spiritual people go and stand, and they help the Israeli soldiers as well as the Palestinian people manage these crossroads where the Palestinians have to cross into Israel proper, and they help maintain the peace. So, when someone told me that, I didn't even know that until about a year ago. I started working with a client who lives in Bethlehem, an American woman, and I just burst out crying. I had no idea that the book had done that. I knew about the languages, but so what you have to think about, hold this in your thought, and we'll talk about the industry in a moment, because that's the big question. Everybody gets hung up on, the industry, in one sense, excuse my language, but I say to hell with the industry. What's the voice calling you to do?
Yeah.
And as I think about the people in your audience, Joy, the term that comes to me is, we're the people who have what I call epigenetic thought. we know that epigenetics is that, the power of the mind really can influence the power, our genes, our bodies. But there's also a cultural epigenetics. And right now we're at a point where we need these new ideas. We need new thought. We need the conscious people to step forward and present their truth. Because if you look, I mean, there's so many forces that are pulling us into the dark, or want to. And what's going to happen when we come out of this current crisis that we're in here in April 2020 is that where are the ideas that are going to form the new world that we have to live in? Yes. Where are those ideas? Who has them? Who's got the buckets of light? Who are you? Get busy. And then specifically coming back to the whole publishing industry, we have gone through a huge earthquake, and it really began back in 2008, 2009 with the shaking of the economy, and publishers, traditional publishers, tightening up on who they'll publish, how much money they'll put into marketing. But at the same time, we've had this incredible, wonderful explosion of internet and social media and print-on-demand books. And it really, truly, we have everything at our fingertips. All we need is a plan and some know-how and some good old-fashioned stick-to-itiveness. And we can write great books. We can have the books beautifully designed in and out. We can create our own promotional plan. And, I have a number of clients who are self-published authors. One of them, he happens to write novels, but he has had 4 of his books at one time on Amazon's, one of Amazon's bestseller lists. 4 books in the top 10. Because Sean, he pumps the bicycle, he works it. And so it's doable. It's doable. And we can take those buckets of light that we've been given, those seeds of truth, and really just blow them all over the world now.
Yeah.
And we have that incredible open opportunity laying at our feet.
Yeah. Yeah. To be the voice and to listen to the voice. Yeah. And yes, get some support. Get some support. Thank you, David. I'm always love having conversations with you. I really appreciate your depth and your experience, your years of experience, and this is your superpower. You're a sensitive, articulate writer and speaker, and full of metaphors. So I'm uplifted. I hope all of you are too. I'm gonna put in the description below this video how to get in touch with David and find out about his coaching and his support with promotion and marketing as well. And, David, I always like to just give you another moment to wrap up anything that you didn't say that you want to. This is it.
This is it. Oh my gosh.
This is it.
The secret of the ages.
Oh, sit back. Let's take it in. Wisdom is about to speak.
Well, I'm listening. I hope it shows up. Yeah. I think it just comes down to that notion of, we are all in this together. Whatever this is, we are. As Ram Dass said, we're all just children walking each other home. That's really what it comes down to. Nobody higher, nobody lower, but we each have an important piece of the journey. And, unless we share it, somebody will miss a step. They'll miss a piece of knowledge, because we are, each one of us, uniquely fitted to tell a piece of that journey. And yeah, so, I'm relying on the rest of you to help walk me home.
Wow. And isn't that the truth? What a pleasure. I know for myself, and I can imagine you too, what a pleasure to work with the likes of each and every one of you listening right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What a, yeah, let's walk home together. That's kind of what I feel like saying. Let's walk home together. And thank you, David.
All right. Thank you so much. Great to be here. And we'll talk again soon.
I know we will. All right. Thanks, everyone. Live, love, and lead your soul inspired life. Let's add and write. Let's write it too.
And
Why
right.
not? Write your soul inspired life.
Come
All right.
on.
Yeah, let's go home.